Let me go right from taxes to energy. My next guest is the communications director at Power the Future, Larry Behrens. Are the Democrats going to try to make the case, or is Biden going to try to make the case that oil production actually went up during his administration? If that was the case, he wouldn't have to release barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
You're absolutely right, Andrew. Yeah, he's going to try to make that case, and you're going to hear a lot of words like climate and existential threats and so forth as Americans are dealing with the real threats coming across the border and not being able to afford gas or groceries. He is going to try to make the case that what he's done is good for us, when in fact we're all paying, at least 20% more for everything according to the Biden inflation tax. But Americans know what he's done with energy, and that includes draining the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and really using it as a political reserve.
Can you explain their logic? Because I hear that over and over and over again from Democrats that oil production went up. Well, if that was the case, we're making more than we need, prices should be coming down. It's like when they say inflation is down, but gold is over $2,300 an ounce. How does their logic work on that?
Well, asking me to try to understand their logic is very hard, but I'm going to make an attempt here. So production is up, but you have to remember that when someone asks for a permit, it's about 3 to 4 years before they're even going to get production. So the production we're seeing now are permits that were given the thumbs up during the Trump administration that Joe Biden wants to take credit for. The facts are really similar, or are really simple, that Joe Biden has leased the fewest acres of American land of any president ever. Jimmy Carter leased 93 times the amount of acres that Joe Biden did. Joe Biden's Interior Department brags about having the fewest offshore acres for oil production. And so he has limited the amount of land where we can produce oil in the United States. At the same time, in addition to draining our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, he has gone off to Saudi Arabia to beg them to make more oil. And so he's more than happy with fracking as long as it's coming out of Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or Iran or any other of our adversaries. But he cripples our American production because his green friends in the environmental movement are telling him to do that. And Americans know all this. They've lived under this trial of the Green New Deal over the last 3 years. And they're, Joe Biden's going to have to try to make the argument, don't believe your own lying eyes, don't believe your own lying wallet, believe this guy that had to, take 7 days off to prepare for this moment.
Okay, so the wells might be producing more, but there's fewer of them. Therefore, it's like per capita versus raw numbers and stuff like that, or percentages. So the futures, which determine prices, futures don't look bright if he is blocking permits and canceling pipelines. So on one metric, it appears that production is up, but not in a way that would bring the price down.
It's absolutely right. And even if the price does dip a little bit, as maybe we've seen the last week or two, it's because Americans don't have money to be able to be putting gas in the car anymore. Demand is actually down because Americans are having to cut back. But when you look at whatever production number he touts, you have to realize he did cancel the Keystone XL pipeline. He did declare war on so much of our energy infrastructure. You have to ask yourself, is this production number because of Joe Biden or in spite of Joe Biden? It speaks to the resilience of the American energy workers. But also, it really is head-scratching doesn't begin to describe it. It really is head-scratching because you have to ask yourself, what could they do if Joe Biden would just have gotten out of the way? And that's what I think many Americans are going to be thinking about when they go to vote in November. Will Joe Biden get out of the way?
Well, he could have just left all the Trump policies in place, but he wasn't going to. So you got 4 years of a lesson. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I said that to our previous guest, Brandon Arnold, and the answer is no. So tomorrow night, I'm reading that his advisors are telling him not to try to cite his record. Well, he's going to have no choice because Donald Trump's going to get a 1-minute rebuttal for every 2-minute answer that Biden gives, and all Donald Trump really has to do is lay out the facts. The facts are on his side. Food prices, gas prices, mortgage interest rates, inflation, the border, all of these things. And by the way, they're all intertwined. When you say we have a lack of housing in this country, well, it's because we have too many people in the country illegally taking up that housing. But if President Trump just sticks to the facts, he wins.
Absolutely. And it's not surprising that Joe Biden is not going to talk about his record. If my record was Joe Biden's, I wouldn't talk about it either. But he can't hide from it because he has so many entrenched special interests that are pushing him in this insane radicalized direction. We've seen it in the energy spectrum when we see that prices have gone up. Joe Biden delivered the highest gas prices we have ever seen in the history of our country. And he's trying now to pretend, well, lo and behold, that I've brought them down. Let's be clear. When Donald Trump was in office, the average retail price of gas never went above $3 a gallon. And yet it has almost always been, for his entire first term, above $3 a gallon for Joe Biden. Americans remember that. And that's what Joe Biden may be able to forget the last few days, but Americans won't forget the last few years and what they've had to go through.
Joe Biden forgot the last 5 minutes. All right, I gotta leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Andrew.